my pronouns are any for friends or they, them on any publications. I'm in my first year of law, and yeah, that answers it.
What is your campaign colour and slogan?
My color is purple, and my slogan is K for K-pop, as a throwback to my campaign last year.
Who is your campaign manager?
Me. I'm a strong, independent person. This isn't a wedding ring, it's just an accessory after making that statement.
And what is your favourite USU outlet?
It's a hard choice. I want to say Courtyard. It has really nice lighting, and I now know the pasta of the day is $10.
Are there any factions that you are currently or formerly
Part of. I'm in Interpol, which stands for International Students in Politics, as I'm an international student from Canada myself. And if Independence Incorporated counts as a faction, we also work closely together. We're sort of like interconnected oftentimes for a lot of people, and us, of course.
And will your faction bind your decisions on the board, or are you free to make your own decisions if you are to be elected?
I'm free to make my own decisions, of course, and I am the person who started this faction as well, because I figured we need more international student representation, so I get to sort of the same thing. But if it weren't me, say my candidate for SRC, which was Emma as well, I always encourage her to go what she feels is right and make her own decisions. But we're pretty agreeable on the same things as well, I think. So that's why we get along so well.
There are 10 other candidates who are running this year. What do you think makes your campaign different from the others?
I think mine is, well, I'm hopefully going to be a lot less like goofy and like unaware of a lot of things as last year, or like not like last year. I think I have a good mix of pop culture and uni life alongside, it's not on my policy statement because again, this was a joke at first, but more support and advocacy for students, where I think I can really use media and my skills with that sort of thing in order to engage people and like help them sort of, help them sort of understand better about uni life and student needs and make people more aware. So I think the important thing in marketing, which was what I did before, is to engage in your audience and figure out what the consumer wants and how to get their attention. So I think like my Instagram handle is KVW Media. So I think through that platform and like just my experience, I can really get in a good mix of both.
And so you mentioned transitioning from doing more of a jokey campaign to genuine. Do you have an upcoming policy sheet or a specific initiative that you're really keen on getting through?
So like my policies from last year still stand, of course, the main ones being international student welfare and just inclusion for all, where I think that's not as often talked about in uni because like with the strikes, for example, a lot of people who maybe like aren't members of the union or maybe aren't new to this country or like first years, they like from my friend groups and like what I've heard, they didn't seem to be as aware as to why the staff were striking or like the details behind the unfair treatment towards workers of the university, whereas they kind of just thought, oh, damn, the staff are going on strike again. That sucks. I guess they just want blah, 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 but I don't really care. So I think that sort of using this campaign to make people more aware of ongoing issues and maybe what they can do to help or support other people alongside myself and doing that sort of direction is where I'd want to be headed.
So you mentioned a lot of really important issues there that students face. Do you think the USU board is in a position to do more on those issues beyond discounts, or do you think that their current policies are addressing these issues for students?
I mean, there's obviously like more they could do, but I think the question is if they would want to do it, and if like anyone would want to sort of see it from this perspective and do it for the sake of helping others rather than promoting themselves. Like this isn't at anyone, just it's human nature, right? Rather than just promoting themselves or getting votes, whatever, like just for people to like them. Like, it's hard to do things for others when it requires like your own money and your own effort sometimes, and there's like no reward for this essentially, and people might not even know, oh, like XYZ group or person did this. So I think there could be a lot of things the USU could do, both the student board directors, and just the organization as a whole.
If you were elected to board, what would you do about these issues?
I would be one person, but I would hope that others would get behind it. But I would vouch for more like free food, because as another issue that like the disadvantaged students I mentioned face is that it is a little like embarrassing, or some people don't want to be talking about these things. So if there was more food, more like resources and more awareness, then students could just sort of have access to these without having to apply for, oh, I have this and this issue going on, I'm in need of so-and-so. And the USU is essentially seen as like the clubs and food outlets rather than like a business itself. So I think that having this reputation, we could engage in more of these sorts of services.
Which candidate would you support for president in the upcoming executive election? So either a current board director or somebody who's running this time for a go at board.
I didn't know the new directors could run.
Normally not, but this year there's a candidate who's already served on board.
Oh, I
so
see.
They've got prior boarder experience.
Can
you think of anyone? Is there a candidate who you most identify with, or a board director specifically who you identify most with, who you think would be best?
Oh, I'm thinking.
Okay.
Based on their policies and they stand for. I was just making sure, but I want to say Naz, because I think she takes on a very like left-wing and supportive of activism stance, which like I still identify as a centrist, I would like to say, but she's very like smart and level-headed in making these sorts of decisions and finding ways to engage people and get involved in this sort of thing on campus. And I think that the USU does really need a leader who can do all of that. And like, yeah, that kind of sums it up. This is gonna be so awkward when she sees this, but I definitely support.
Do you think that the USU has a transparency issue?
Well, yeah, most companies do, but like that's sort of something I think that was mentioned a lot last year. But I think the problem is that, again, as I mentioned, people don't take an interest, and like corporations think they could sort of just, glaze over or just not really, if they don't bring attention to it, then like no one will know, sort of thing. So I think in order for this issue to be resolved, which there is, I want to say, there should be more awareness towards this, and not from any of the student board directors again.
In an article by Khan Tran, former editor, international student, they outlined that if 100 volunteers per Welcome Week were to be paid by the USU, it would only cost $15,000, which is just 1.2% of that surplus in 2021. Would you endorse a motion for the USU to start paying its unpaid student volunteers?
Yeah, what is up with that? Like, I saw that in first year. It's like, oh, you'll be volunteering 10 to some, like maybe not that number, but a crazy amount, and you'll get paid $1 in food credit for USU board out or USU outlets, and that sounds like exploitation with extra steps, to quote Rick and Morty.
So you just mentioned that you do participate in a lot of clubs and societies. Do you think these are currently well supported by the USU? If not, is there anything you would change about how clubs and societies function with USU support at the moment?
I think they do for the most part. It's just like funding that's sort of, and I know it's very like, they have a lot of work to do, so, and there's like very limited numbers of staff, but I think that like funding takes a long time to like, a lot of processes have to be made in terms of like reimbursement and like receiving funding for clubs. So like, for example, like clubs have a bank account usually, and the USU funds clubs through that, and they will deposit the money into the bank account. But like for new clubs, for example, which one of mine, the Dark Academia and Literature Society, was new last year, and we had to make our bank account with more than one signatory. But the problem with that is that this isn't even in like the Commonwealth Bank in uni, this isn't a very like well-known process for a lot of staff members. So then it takes a long time, and because your bank account has to be sort of like ratified and like approved, like the USU won't give you funding unless the bank account is made, and even then you'll need several people to like, you know, be the signatories, be in charge of it, and there's just like, it's a really tedious process. But once the semester starts, like clubs sort of need the money to like run events and like do stuff. So a lot of it I sort of had to buy myself because we were new at the time. I had to buy like supplies or like snacks because I didn't want like our members to not have anything to eat for events. And like, I feel like that there could be a better process for that, such as maybe using like a university account or having the uni be in charge of that. But like, again, I feel like that's easier said than done.
So in your quiz results, there were a couple of areas where you struggled to provide answers. Do you have a plan for how you would overcome that gap in knowledge, or how you would address these issues going forward should you be elected?
I would definitely do better research. I want to say I sort of didn't expect the quiz this year to be more serious rather than have a lot of sort of trivia facts, such as like last year's quiz questions were like extremely unrelated to like the USU, and I sort of thought it would be like that this year. But if I had known that this would actually sort of be more, have that serious sort of vibe, I probably would have studied more, which I would and probably should, even if I don't get elected.
Can you summarize why students should vote for you in one sentence, please?
Vote K for K-pop and student welfare.